Hello everyone, it's Brett here, Lionheart84, and this is actually my delayed, meant to be the first Sunday of the month garden tour. Now it's actually the 8th of Sunday when I'm filming this, and the first Sunday was the 1st of October, but I was out all day last Sunday and therefore wasn't available to film the video, so you're getting it a week late, but as the first was a Sunday, you can kind of almost in a roundabout way call this the first Sunday in the month. So I'm going to do a quick walk around and look and see what's happening, see what's getting up to a decent sort of state now. I'm going to start with the medlars. Doing very nicely. I've got some quite decent sized fruits on this, to be honest. Obviously you leave them on until they get frosted. They call it bletting, and that softens them, and then they're ideal for making into medlar jam or jelly. They're not a particularly tasty fruit as far as I'm concerned, but this plant has got loads and loads of fruits on the various sizes. Some of them are only an inch, some of them are closer to sort of 2 inches in size, so I should have enough to make a jam or jelly, and I'm really pleased it's done so well in a pot. Might put it into a bigger pot for next year. Now down underneath the medlar, let's have a look at how my lemon is recovering. Only one shoot ever came out from the bottom, and I think it's from above the grafted point, but it might not be. Now this is meant to be a Myers lemon. If this is from below the grafting point, then obviously this is not a Myers lemon. It will be the rootstock. Now if it's the rootstock, it may not flower for years if it survives. I am planning to protect it this year. There's one shoot on there, interestingly. The one you can see in the background, I'm pretty sure is from the grafted part of the plant, and it's still green, but it hasn't put out a shoot. But I've decided to leave this shoot anyway, because any shoot's better than none. If it turns out one day not to be a Myers lemon, it will be a good rootstock to try grafting a lemon back onto it, or indeed a yuzu or something else, because the rootstock did survive the -7 degrees. If it is rootstock, if it turns out to be a Myers lemon, I'll know when it flowers. So but I'm pleased with its growth, because it's grown a good 2 feet or 60 centimeters right up to here. I've got to say, the leaves, can't remember now what the Myers lemon leaves look like, if they're meant to have petioles on them or not. I've probably got another Myers lemon, so I'll have a comparison later and see if they look like the lemon leaves. Not too sure. Anyway, let's carry on the garden tour. The mulberry here is pretty much going into dormancy. They tend to go into dormancy very early in my garden, probably because it's in a pot, and I think it's very pot bound, so I'm going to repot that in as well in winter. Next to it, we move on to my first pineapple guava. This one is Mammoth. Got quite a nice quantity of fruits developing on it. They're not a bad size for the first Sunday in October. They've got about 3 to 4 weeks hopefully growing left in them, and I really need them to double this size to get to a decent edible size. That's not the biggest one. There are some slightly bigger fruits on it, like this one, and I've noticed quite a lot of them are this sort of 2-inch size, but there are definitely some reasonable sized ones coming on other parts of the plant. There's a couple round the back as well. Let's see, this one here is looking quite decent. There's a decent sized one at the back, so it looks like I'm going to get a few really good sized fruits off this. Obviously we'll just have to hope that the weather stays kind for the next 2 or 3 weeks so they keep swelling. I was hoping to break my record size, which I think was about 120 grams for a fruit this year, and that was on a mammoth, but I'm not convinced that that's going to happen, but we'll wait and see. All of my blueberries are going into well, not all of them, some of them are starting to go into dormancy one. This one now has got a nice sort of purplish colour to the leaves. The one behind, interestingly, hasn't started changing colour yet, but that's the variation you get in the varieties. Next to that is my unnamed seedling, or what I believe is an unnamed seedling, pineapple guava, which up till now has produced dreadful fruits, but actually it's doing quite well this year. If these carry on increasing in size until the end of September, it's going to have a handful of fruits on it that should be bigger than golf ball sized, which would be handy, because it might well be they'll be quite edible. There's more there, there's more there. It's still got lots of small fruits on it, but it is developing a few slightly larger ones that, as I said, could be quite edible this year, so that would be a nice bonus if that's the case, because last year it didn't produce any edible fruits at all, and this year definitely going to have some that I think will be the size of a golf ball, which should make them edible. Even tucked away inside the plant there's quite a few good ones. Now behind that we've got my seedling, unnamed seedling, Asian persimmon. Did flower this year, obviously didn't set any fruits. I'm sure it's a male, and I'm now considering the possibility of cutting it back in the spring and maybe using it for grafting some other varieties onto, so I get one tree with several varieties on, because I can't see the point of having a large male persimmon tree in the garden. It serves no purpose at all. But if I could graft some of my other varieties onto it, if I happen to lose the trees, it means there's a chance that I could get some other varieties on this, so that would be difficult to keep the male one under control so it doesn't outgrow the grafts. Next to that I've got my Caesalpinia. Didn't flower this year, got badly frosted last winter, but I'm glad it's recovered. Now at the front here, just going to show you very quickly, didn't get any nerine flowers last year, but for whatever reason this year the nerines decided to make a comeback and has put out a couple of flower buds. I have got 2 or 3 other nerines, but they don't seem to be, it doesn't look as if they're going to flower this year, but I'm glad to have had 2 flower spikes, but it does give you a lovely burst of colour in October. Still got leaves on my pomegranate. Unfortunately the one pomegranate on it hasn't really swollen. I hoped it was going to increase in size in September, but frankly it looks pretty much the same size it's looked for the last 4 weeks, and I can't see it growing much more now. But there's obviously a chance. I've bagged it to protect it from birds and other animals that might peck at it, as it's the only pomegranate, so I'm hoping it will grow bigger in the next month. We'll see. They're incredibly slow growing fruits, except perhaps in the Mediterranean climate, but one is better than none. Tucked away behind that, and I'm going to cut back the pomegranate a bit this winter and try and get some light to it, is my sunflower pawpaw that's never really done any good, because obviously it's been over sheltered behind there and probably got too much competition from roots for water and nutrients. My bottle brush unfortunately did die completely, but as it was taking up valuable space, it'll probably allow the other plants to spread out more. Still got flowers on my Campsis radicans, and that's got a lovely colour this year. Butterfly bush is pretty much finished flowering now, so I'll be cutting that back soon. Now we move on to my Triumph pineapple guava. This year it's well behind the mammoth in terms of fruit development. Has got a fair number of fruits on it of all sorts of bizarre different shapes and sizes. For whatever reason this year they're sort of they're not the shape they've been previously. They seem like a very strange shape, possibly because I cut it back hard and therefore it's been a bit stunted, but nevertheless it's going to produce some definitely edible fruits. But it quite surprises me how often they vary in shape and size each year. I don't know, probably got about 8 to 10 fruits on it. I don't know if there's any tucked away at the back here. Yeah, there's one under there as well, which is doing quite nice. It's a bit longer than the others. It doesn't really do very well with the stems that are in the shade, but still looks as if we're going to get a few more fruits hidden away. Now next to it I've got obviously my unnamed seedling pawpaw. The fruits have been slow developing this year. I've put a couple of single ones in bags in the hope that I could protect them and stop them dropping off. There's a little group of bunch of 4 there. That's a single one. As regards my grafted section, that may or may not be all right. Looks as if one shoot is okay. That was the Allegheny, and there's another grafted stem somewhere around here. This one looks much better. This is the I think this is a Shenandoah. That one looks like both the shoots have taken. They look much healthier. There's another bunch of 4 pawpaw here. There's a single one higher up in the tree that I've bagged. I've also bagged this one here. This is a single one. It's easy to bag the single ones. It's quite a decent size actually. And there's another little bunch of 4 fruits down here as well. So it looks like about 10 or 12 fruits on that tree. These ones seem to have a little yellow tinge to them, so they could be dropping off sometime soon. We'll wait and see what happens. But as I said, that's an unnamed one, but I have got a couple of grafts on it that hopefully will take, and we'll see what happens. Moving on to my raised bed, I've got my 2 Kapow Chilean guavas. That's Agni Molyneux. That's the one that got badly frosted last year, which is doing okay. And this is the one that I planted this year to replace the yuzu. Behind it I've got my cherry guava. Don't know if it's a yellow or a red one. This is grown back from being killed to the ground. I'm hoping the stems are going to get a bit woody, because if they don't get a little bit woodier, they're not going to harden up for winter. But I am going to protect this winter, having failed to protect it last year, thinking naively it was going to be okay. But that extreme cold we had obviously ruined it. So we'll see how that goes. I've still got flowers opening on my Maypop. It's Passiflora incarnata. Obviously hasn't set any, although it's done really well this year, it hasn't set any fruits because I didn't have a pollinator. But I'll probably plant another passion flower next spring in the hope that that will pollinate it. Nevertheless, lovely to have flowers on it still at the beginning of October. Here's my little avocado I planted in ground. That's a bacon. As a test, just to see what happens. And unfortunately my other passion flowers completely died that were meant to be hardy. It's only the Maypop that survived. I'm going to cover that with a load of sand and mulch this winter to try and keep it from getting too damp. Most of my the Luma apiculata flowered heavily, never set a single fruit, so I believe this one is not self-fertile. I'm going to cut that back very hard this winter because it's out of control, and try and straighten it up as well. This is one of my mulberries, Illinois Everbearing, going completely dormant, as is my supposedly Hanafuyu, and I don't believe it is a Hanafuyu. This is one of my persimmons. Not happy in this pot at all, needs to be repotted. It's down here we've got my pomegranate that died back, largest tree that died back from the ground to the ground. This was the main stem, was a Molar Delsh, but as I presume it was grown from a cutting, I'm guessing that what's come up from the base will be Molar Delsh as well. Asian pears, not looking too bad, still got leaves on them. Haven't gone into dormancy yet. The one that I cut back has branched out nicely. That was the Hong Li, I believe. So that's a Kumoy. That's looking pretty good as well, so I'm happy about that. My jujubes have done nothing this year. I'm going to try them in a different kind of pot. I'm going to repot them this winter in a completely different compost. I'm going to try them in a large fabric pot to see if that gets them to take off, because otherwise I think they need to go in ground and I just haven't got anywhere to put them. This is one of my pawpaw. This didn't have any fruits on it this year. There's the other jujube here. My other pawpaw, the Prima, has got fruits on it and they're still holding. It's got some quite decent, a couple of quite decent sized ones. That looks like a good sized fruit there. And as I said, I've tried to bag most of them to try and protect them from birds and from falling off. We'll see what happens. Running around as we carry on here. I've bagged the persimmons where I've only got 1s and 2s in the hope that I can protect them from animals and insects and from falling. You saw in the video the other day, this is my allegedly Nikita's gift. Again, I've bagged some of the fruits on it in the hope that I can keep them on the plant without being damaged. Not much else of interest there. My figs, unfortunately, look as if I'm not going to get any main crop figs off anything. In fact, these figs have mostly, all these ones in pots, I think they need to go into much bigger pots, have been a complete washout this year. I only had 1 or 2 Brabers, only my large tree and ground produced Brabers, but you can see how poor all these fruits are. Nothing's come of them at all. And I may in fact actually sell off a couple of the plants because I've just got too many figs here now to put them into bigger pots and fit them all in. I'll probably keep things like the Verdone and the Goutte d'Or and just put them into larger containers. I'm going to put them in, try them in fabric pots next year to see what happens. You can see my persimmons at the back are doing quite well. Ooh, sounds like next door's dog's going mad. Those shaped persimmons there, I can't be sure, but I think they might be gyro. Just wait for the dogs to stop yapping. I've got lots of orange looking persimmons at the back there which you probably can't see properly. That's on my Morris Burton, so I'm very pleased with how that's doing. That one there I think is Chocolatino. It's got some persimmons coming on it. The one next to it is probably Russian Beauty, but I really can't be sure without going and checking the labels on them, unfortunately. And there's quite a few green persimmons lower down there as well. That smaller one I think is Tipo. But again, without going and checking the labels, I can't remember because a lot of them look quite similar. But there are loads of orange turning Morris Burtons there. So I think in about 2 weeks' time, I'm going to have quite a few ripe orange Morris Burtons. And I'm not going to net them all, so I'm interested to see if anything's interested in them, any animals. This coming up quite well here is my little Che fruit. That's doing okay. Now, moving on to another one of my pineapple guavas or feijoas. This one is, the first one here is, let me have a look at the label, that's Coolidge. I thought it didn't have fruit on it, but actual fact, and you won't be able to see them through here, but it's got a couple of small fruits developing on it, so it looks like I might get to try a Coolidge this year, and I'm fairly sure I had one under there somewhere. I can't see it now, but they'll become more obvious as they get bigger and other plants around them lose their leaves. Loquat next to it, doing very nicely. Can't see any obvious signs of flower bud development yet, but that remains to be seen because I don't normally throw out the flowers until about November here. This is the kind of stem that is more likely to flower. These new growths don't normally flower. They tend to flower on the ones that didn't put out new growth shoots. And one of them is Oliver and one of them is Mrs. Cookson, but I can't remember which is which without checking the labels. As you can see, my figs are really all going dormant now, unfortunately, early in October, which is why they've not done very well this year with main crops. This pineapple guava, on the other hand, is Marion. And although the fruits are small, it is covered in them. And with any luck, things can get to about a small egg size by the beginning of November, then they'll probably be perfectly edible. And I haven't tried a Marion yet, so I'm interested to see if it tastes exactly the same as all the others or has a little bit of variation. My large in-ground fig, unfortunately, is going to be devoid of main crop figs. There's nothing on here that I can see is going to be big enough to ripen this year. Even the pinching, which previously has worked very well, last year I got quite a lot of main crop figs from pinching. It's been a disaster this year, I believe, because the climate was totally unsuitable in August and September to get the figs to develop properly. The good news is I had a fabulous crop of really high quality Brabus this year, so it's not the end of the world to not have main crop figs, but still slightly surprising given that it gave me main crop figs last year. Certainly can't see anything on it at all that's anywhere near big enough to ripen this year, so this year has been a main crop disaster. Just going to quickly walk round the back here so we can have a look at my this one is Nikita, my pineapple guavas. Again, that's got a lot of smallish fruits on it, similar size to the Marion. I think there is a good chance that this will produce some edible fruits. The one next to it, don't think has any fruits on it at all, or maybe one. I don't know why. It had lots of flowers on, so I've no idea why it didn't set fruits. I think some of these need to be got out into the sun somehow or other next year. You can see how well my persimmons are doing here. Now this one I can now have a look. This is Mount Govela. Now this produces quite a decent sized fruit actually for what's in a pot. Now I believe Mount Govela is a cross between an American and Asian persimmon. Probably one of the ones that's been bred in Europe. I'm trying to remember where Mount Govela is, but it might be somewhere like Ukraine actually. But I know a lot of these have been bred in latter years, and they're a nice size. Definitely ripening. I'm presuming the fruit will be astringent. I'll just have a quick climb around the back here so that you can have a look at my Morris Burton persimmons. There are absolutely loads on the tree, not ripe yet. There's quite a lot of variation in the colour. Some of them are very green still, some are orange. These are definitely an astringent persimmon, and they're definitely an American persimmon, so they have to be left until they're well and truly ripe. I'm being attacked by mosquitoes round here. This one is, what is this tree here? This is the one that I showed you from the front. It's got some nice persimmons on it, and that is my Tipo. So that's doing nicely. The Chocolatino fruits are quite small. Yes, very pleased with how the persimmons are doing, because they did drop an awful lot of fruits, unfortunately. So let's have a quick look at my second loquat. Lots of new growth on it, but no signs of what looked like the flower bud growths, unfortunately. And I really would have expected this. Now I've had it 3 or 4 years. Mind you, I did cut it back very heavily, of course, because I had some problems with it with dieback and what looked like a virus in the first maybe the second year I had it, so I cut it back hard. But I would have expected, as it's a grafted plant, I would have expected the shoots to be producing flowers by now the size it is, so that's a bit frustrating. One of my newer Asian pears. That one is Nijisiki, also known as 20th century, doing quite nicely. Back to my pot growing pineapple guavas. This first one is Triumph. Has got some quite decent fruits coming now. They're definitely more rounded than the Mammoth. They're not quite as elongated. Slight pear-shaped shape to some of them, but they're doing quite nicely. And again, there's a variation of sizes over the tree. Next to it is a Mammoth, flowered much later than my other one, so the fruits are very small on it, and I'm not convinced this one will produce any edible size fruits this year. If they are edible, they're going to be a very small edible fruit, probably no more than about 1.5 inches long, but they might still be edible at that size. You can't always tell. And behind it, doing quite nicely, is my Gemini. And now these fruits are a much better size, and again they've got about a month's growing ahead of them if the weather is kind. The best one on there, which is a good sized fruit, I put in a bag to protect it, and that looks like a really good sized fruit for a Gemini. But there's several others on here that I'll probably bag at a later stage because I'd like to protect them, but I'm pleased with how they're going, and they definitely seem to be a much smoother skinned fruit than the Mammoth. And I think the flesh is less grainy as well, so we should have a few to taste this year. Anyway, I think I picked out most of the interesting thing. That's my my attempt at grafting. It's an awful looking graft now, absolutely looks dire, but it's still just about alive. Whether or not it's going to grow next spring or die off over winter, I don't know. This was a Fuyu onto I think a Lotus persimmon, but I've got to say the graft looks dire, so I'm not holding my breath, but maybe it will survive. We'll wait and see what happens. I've certainly got to improve my grafting technique. And finally, my blue sausage bean tree, not growing at all. And the one I featured this week, my Japanese raisin tree, that's been putting out new growth despite it being in October. Yeah, basically it's all looking as I would have expected at the beginning of October. Very disappointed with the figs. They've been a complete wipeout when it comes to main crop figs this year, but conversely very pleased with how some of the persimmons are doing, and I'm going to definitely have to look again at repotting some of those this winter. And I'm thinking that I might try the persimmons to see if they respond better to the fabric pots, and if I put them into large fabric pots, it will be like their forever home, if you like. So I'm going to get some very large fabric pots, because these plastic pots are in most cases about 33 litres, and I'm buying some. So 33 litres is roughly about 7 gallons, which isn't really enough for trees this size, but I'm buying some 95 litre pots, which are roughly 20 gallons, and I'm figuring that they'll be okay to put the plants in for probably the next 5 years, as long as I put the right soil mix in. So I've got to make sure I get the right soil mix for the persimmons, but it does look as if I'm going to get some decent Asian persimmons this year, probably in November. And of course, once they start to go dormant and drop the leaves, you can see the fruits a lot better, and it's easier to bag them as well. So thanks for joining me on that garden tour. That was meant to be the first Sunday in October, but obviously I'm a few days late, but there was plenty to see, and I hope that you've enjoyed having a look at what's going on in my garden, and that your garden's doing exactly the same as mine. Thanks for watching. Please give me a thumbs up. Remember to share the video if you think people might be interested in seeing what you can grow in the UK. Please subscribe to my channel, and remember to click on the bell if you'd like updates on new videos as they come out. I'll catch up with you all soon. Brett out for now.